Well, good afternoon and welcome to the CMAX webinar to discuss the net merit formula changes that are coming next week with the August proofs. My name is Shannon, and I'm the Director of Genetic Programs and Solutions at CMAX, and I am very pleased to be joined by Dr. Stephen Larmer, Senior Manager Genomics at CMAX for this presentation. Welcome, Stephen. If you have any questions or comments you can think of during the presentation, please don't wait. We ask you to use the box in your webinar control panel to type in your questions, and we will address the questions before closing out the webinar. Also, you will notice in your GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar control panel, there is 2 documents that you can download. There's an article from Dairy Business Magazine on net merit changes, and there's also a frequently asked questions document that was produced by CDCB that you can download as well. So net merit formula, so what net merit is, it's a selection for economic value. So it is a composite trait put into one single index that tries to contain all traits that have a contribution to the total economic equation on the farm. So what they refer to as lifetime net merit ranks dairy animals based on their combined genetic merit for economically important traits. The net merit formula is updated every few years when there's new traits that are added to the suite of traits offered by CDCB, or there's reasons that economics have been updated and changes are required to make sure the net merit reflects the current economic situation. In addition, adjustments are made to existing traits to account for economic parameter changes or expected price changes. So that's when they do add traits, then it's a full update of all the parameters of the formula. And when they add a trait, it may be a trait that is correlated with existing traits, positively or negatively. So it may cause some impact in terms of the impacts on other traits by adding this new trait into the equation to define the total economics. If you think about net merit over time and what it has occurred, it actually started in the early 70s with just 2 traits in milk and fat. And then protein came in 1977. And so they had 3 traits, all production, mostly a single trait selection. And then it's been a continuous, since 1994, a continuous addition of traits that have proven economic and incorporating those traits. And you can see that from the years 1994 to 2021, the formula has gone from 5 traits to 35 traits now with the latest revision. Every time a change happens, the far right column tells us about extra progress that's achieved by the new traits, and that extra progress means extra economic genetic gain that can be achieved. And but when you add traits and change and have those impacts, then we have re-rankings. One we can observe in re-rankings is the correlation of the former index with the changed index, and you can see that has always been, whenever they make changes, it's somewhere around that, similar to what this current one is, 98% correlation. But what we'll see in today's webinar is don't be fooled by the 98% correlation, because that's like the whole population from worst to highest, and what's the correlation of this? And obviously with many of the same traits, the population will rank close to the same. When we look at the top ranking bulls in the population, the top females in the population, the correlation in just within those groups lowers significantly. So we do expect to see significant re-ranking in the top of our bull and female lists. If we just summarize, and Stephen's going to go into much more detail, but just as my handoff, the changes in August 2021, we saw feed save that was added as a new proof back in December. This feed saved is derived from a thing called residual feed intake, or what is like biological feed efficiency. And it also had a negative weighting on body weight composite, the body maintenance component of feed feed efficiency, we'll say. So that's the two parts that were in feed saved. So for the net merit, the residual feed intake is a totally new trait. Body weight is one that was already in the equation, but the negative weight on body weight composite is going to be increased. Two other new traits are being added: heifer livability. There already is a cow livability, so now as a calf, livability is being added as an important trait, and early first calving as an extra trait in terms of overall fertility being added to the net merit equation. If we think about when I said they add new traits and they update different ones, the existing traits based on the current economics and their research was that in essence a reduction in the emphasis of fat versus protein. And whenever you change that fat protein ratio, expect to see quite a bit of re-ranking in bulls, because that's quite variable on the different bulls. Productive life is being increased, and Stephen's gonna explain how and why that is. And you'll also notice that the type component wasn't heavily weighted in net merit, but now it's quite significantly lower weighted in terms of the net merit. So the udder composite and the feet and leg composite receive lower weightings, and these are the basis behind our re-rankings and our changes in net merit. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Stephen to give us the nitty-gritty and all the changes.
Thanks, Jay. I'd like to just start here by giving credit to all the slides I will present today are information directly taken from CDCB and more specifically taken from presentations from João Dur, the CDCB CEO, as well as Paul Van Reyden, the senior research geneticist who works primarily on these changes to the net merit and both the economics and the genetics underlying the net merit. So all these slides are taken from that information, from their slides presenting these changes. So once again, thank you to them for all this information. So just to start looking at the full list of changes of relative emphasis in the net merit, looking at traits in the 2018 net merit, and then also the three newly added traits at the bottom. So the traits that are increasing emphasis and the newly added traits, I will go through slide by slide, one by one, and kind of talk through the emphasis. The ones that are reducing in emphasis here at the top of the slide, I'm really just going to talk about briefly now. So starting with fat, there is a reduced emphasis on fat in the net merit formula coming in 2021, and there's kind of two quick reasons for that. One is looking at the cost of production of fat as CDCB worked on feed efficiency and worked on residual feed intake. What they found was that the actual cost of production of fat was much higher than originally thought. And what that means is if it's more expensive to produce, there's less marginal potential economic gain by selecting for fat, because you are going to have to feed those animals accordingly to get that fat, and thus the profitability of fat production may not be quite as high as was previously thought. That, combined with some of the economic indicators of future fat price in the milk market, either going down or at least not increasing as much as protein, means that the relative emphasis on fat has decreased. The decrease we're going to see in udder composite really has to do with the fact that we've made tremendous gains in udder conformation, and so there's really less marginal gain to be made by selecting for increased udder composite, or at least not to the same magnitude. And so there's less emphasis because there's less to be gained in terms of optimizing the udder conformation, in terms of reducing milking labor and having a better udder conformation from an udder health standpoint as well. Feet and legs composite is also losing a little bit of emphasis, and that's largely because the recent research has shown that feet and leg composite is not very well correlated with hoof health, and not very well correlated with lameness. And for that reason, there's not a lot of reason to put a huge amount of emphasis on foot and leg composite for those specific reasons. There's still some emphasis from just general mobility and ability to function, but there's not nearly the same emphasis because of the previously thought correlations, the assumed correlations with hoof health and lameness. The calving traits have also decreased in emphasis, and this is really just a downshoot of the changes that have been made in those calving traits over the last couple of years. But ultimately, the re-estimation of those traits have really led to a significantly lower phenotypic average and phenotypic standard deviation, and that functionally puts a lot less emphasis on those traits as well. If there's not as much variance in the trait, that means there's not as much genetic variance, means we're not going to make as much progress, and so we don't have as much emphasis either. Livability has also decreased somewhat in emphasis, and this is largely because of great management leading to death rates in the US population decreasing in cows, in the cow population. And so there's less emphasis on livability because there's not as much marginal to be gained on keeping cows alive, because more of the population is staying alive. And those cull cow prices have declined. So being able to keep an animal alive and get cull cow salvage value, if the cull cow salvage value is not as high, there's not as much economic incentive to keep those animals alive per se. And so that's why we see a decreased emphasis on livability. And then we're going to see an increased emphasis on productive life and body, an increased negative emphasis on body weight composite. And then we do have these three newly added traits: the RFI, the residual feed intake component of feed saved and feed efficiency, a new heifer livability trait, and early first calving, as Jay alluded to. And I'll go through each of these in the following slides. So we'll start with the early first calving trait, and this is really a measure of the ability of a heifer to mature quickly as well as to be fertile. If an animal is able to calve early, that means two things. It means they will be able to be bred at a slightly earlier age, and were capable of conceiving at that younger age, and ultimately ending up with a younger first calving. So this is kind of a composite measure of early maturity and as well as fertility. It has a value of about $2 per day earlier calving, and that ultimately adds up to a relative emphasis of about 1% of the new net merit in 2021. And ultimately, this trait is a little bit more valuable than heifer conception rate, and so that's why we see a decrease in the emphasis on heifer conception rate from 1% down to 0.5, because an early first calving is really a better economic indicator than just heifer fertility. If an animal is mature faster and we can breed them younger, not just that they're fertile whenever they're ready to be bred, but if we can breed them younger, we're going to save some days on feed of a heifer, and ultimately that's going to make more general economic progress than just having fertile heifers. Having both early mature and fertile heifers is a better trait, and that's why we see emphasis shifting from heifer conception rate over to this new early first calving trait. The next trait to briefly talk about here is heifer livability, and this is very, very straightforward, just a measure of heifer survival, the ability to not die between birth and first calving. It has a value of under $5 per every 1% survivability, so it's not a hugely economic important trait, especially if you consider the standard deviation only being 0.8%. So ultimately, this only adds up to a relative emphasis of about 0.5% in net merit, but it's a well-recorded, well-evaluated trait. So even though it's less than $5 of a total contribution to the expected progress of net merit, it's still worth adding because it is a high-quality trait. It's consistent and predictable, and therefore putting it in at a small emphasis still provides overall expected genetic progress towards profitability of the whole index. Now the biggest trait being added here in August is the residual feed intake trait. This is a measure of feed intake that's been adjusted to be uncorrelated with either yield or body size. So both yield and body size are already well accounted for in the net merit through the body weight composite trait, as well as the three primary yield traits. And so we can take out and just get the marginal feed intake, the residual, in this case, feed intake, uncorrelated with those, and really estimate how much money we can save by feeding cows less to get the same amount of production, or by getting more production from the same amount of feed, depending on how you want to look at it. This is based off 6,000 lactations collected at research herds, primarily in the US, although they've now incorporated some Canadian data in there as well. So that's an ongoing research effort, and this has been a huge international research effort over the last 10 to 15 years to collect good quality feed intake data on cattle to be able to generate this trait, as well as some of the feed intake, residual feed intake, and feed efficiency traits we see in other indexes around the world as well. The economic value of this trait is very, very high, given how large of a component feed costs are on an average dairy. So all else equal, the emphasis on this trait would be 12% of net merit. However, because it is a fairly low reliability trait, because it is based on only 6,000 lactations compared to other traits where we have millions of records, the relative emphasis is a fair bit lower due to a lower reliability of the trait itself. So the relative emphasis that the RFI component gets in the net merit is only about 4% of the total index, but it's still by far the biggest impact on the net merit changes in August. And as I said here, there's an expectation that many more records from Europe and around the world, as well as continued research efforts in North America, will be added to this index. And so we do expect to see at least a small creep up of that 4% emphasis over time as the trait itself becomes more reliable. So now looking at the traits that have increased in their emphasis, and the one most related to the slide I was just talking about is body weight composite. And so in looking at the economics of feed efficiency, a big part of that is also estimating the maintenance component of feed efficiency, how much feed needs to be delivered to an animal just to perform their basic basal metabolic activities. And so part of this with all this new feed intake data is the ability for CDCB and AUG and the scientists there to really better estimate how much feed does it take to produce or to produce that basal metabolic energy needed for cows of different sizes. And so the assumption pre this proof round was that it took about 1.7 pounds of dry matter intake per pound of body weight. That was what was used in the net merit up until now. They did a number of different analyses to look at within that research population what was the value, and you can see those range anywhere from 5.8 to 6.3, depending on the method that was used to compare pounds of dry matter intake versus pounds of body weight of a cow. But looking at that and combining that with the NRC values from the nutrition literature, the net merit settled on a slightly more conservative value than that, but they're now using an assumption of 4.5 pounds of dry matter intake per extra pound of body weight. But that does still lead to a very significant increase in the emphasis on BWC, the negative emphasis. So it goes to 9.4% of the net merit, whereas it was only 5.3% of the net merit before this August proof run. So a very big change here, and another very big impact on the overall re-ranking of the net merit that Jay will talk about later. Another trait that significantly increased emphasis, or at least a 3% increase in its emphasis, is productive life. And there were two major changes here. One that would lead to a decrease in emphasis of productive life, and then another that leads to an increase. So the decrease here is really accounting for the genetic gain that's happening in the population, both with the use of genomic sires, as well as the faster turnover, often in terms of the most prominent producers of the genetics of the next generation on the female side getting younger, with more and more heifers being bred to sex semen and potentially even IVF strategies, things like that, and the older cows much more and more going towards beef on dairy. What we see is that the younger animals are from a per year standpoint are better. They're making more genetic progress per year than we ever were in the past. And because of that, those younger animals, there's more incentive to actually turn the herd over to capture that genetic gain. So that decreases the emphasis we would normally see on productive life. Because if our younger animals are our best genetic producers, we want to get more of those younger animals to get more of those better genetic producers. So that would decrease the emphasis on productive life by about 6%. So that takes us from 12, where it was before, down to 6. However, they've also looked at some adjustments to better account for additional profit of each subsequent lactations beyond the first. So the original assumption in the net merit was that all lactations were equally valuable, that having a second lactation was just as valuable as 2 first lactations. The reality here is that a second lactation cow makes more milk, is more productive, and therefore that second lactation is more valuable, the third lactation even more valuable yet. So if that's properly accounted for, being able to account for the greater relative profitability of each lactation, that gives us a lot more incentive to select for a longer productive life to get more of those animals in the later lactations where they are making more marginal profit than younger animals. And so properly accounting for that increases the emphasis on productive life by 9%. So we go down 6, we go up 9, which is a net increase of 3% from 12% relative emphasis where we were before on productive life. Now it accounts for 15% of the net merit. So these changes, all in all, and really this slide speaks mostly to the introduction of residual feed intake. We do see the net merit index in general being slightly less reliable as an index. The average reliability value of the index is lower in August than it was prior to these changes, and that stands for both proven and young animals, as you can see here. So the net merit previously for proven animals would be 99% reliable. Adding the RFI component into the index brings that overall reliability down to about 95% for those proven animals. And then on the young animal side, an average was about 76%, looking at the net merit of a young animal, and that's now dropped to about 71% on average for those young animals with no progeny. The reason that the reason the decision is made to do things like that, to decrease the reliability of the index, is because ultimately having a high reliability index is really only part of the story, and it's not the main goal. It's not the main driver here. The main driver here is maximizing the expected amount of economic progress that we're going to see in the population by selecting on the index. And so these changes, as you can see here, the addition of RFI gives us an additional expected 0.85% of progress in terms of driving progress towards profitability. So direct economic genetic progress. And the value of that to the industry is over $4 million per year. And that's speaking solely to the US industry. All the changes that are being made this proof round add up to about an additional 2% of relative economic gain, and the total value of all that is over $9 million to the US industry. So even though we are decreasing somewhat in reliability, the expected genetic progress of the whole population is larger using the new index than it would be without making these changes to the index. And that's really the whole fundamental reason for including these new traits and making these revisions. And as Jay showed here before, this is a fairly similar change to the ones we've seen previously, both in terms of the correlation with previous indexes, as well as the additional progress we expect to see. It is the biggest change that we've seen since 2014, but it's not that much larger than some of the other changes we've seen in previous years. But as Jay is going to highlight later, when we talk about the elite part of the population, there are some significant re-rankings and some significant changes to be aware of. And I'm pretty sure that's why most of you are here listening today. And just one of my final slides here is just looking at the relative emphasis versus the relative economic value, just to once again highlight that some of these traits get slightly more emphasis than their relative economic value, and other traits get slightly less, and that's really a function of the reliability. So this is really just to highlight that the reliability values are really well taken into account in the building of these indexes, and that's why we put a little bit of extra emphasis on traits like fat, protein, and productive life versus just their direct economic value, because they are high reliability, really consistent traits, versus a trait like RFI that has huge economic value, but because it's not as reliable, it's not as accurate, we take a lot of relative emphasis off of that trait in the building of the index to make sure that we are taking some of the potential volatility out of the index going forward, but still making progress as well as we possibly can for those high impact economic traits. And really what all this leads to is you can see that the difference in the distribution of the net merit for all AI bulls. Looking at the previous index versus the current one, we see a broadening of the distribution, meaning that there is more variation, and more variation means more potential for progress. And so because we see a widening of the bell curve and a slight shift to the right, meaning that bulls on average will go up in economic value. But we see this shift to widen the curve, and that's really what allows us to make more progress over time relative to the previous index. And really what that leads to is a genetic trend. If we look at the new net merit, where we expect the genetic trend will increase at a faster rate using the new index than it would using the previous. And I believe that's my last slide, so I'll pass it back to Jay to talk about the impact of some of these changes. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and I thought that was excellent, and just a nice walk through step by step of each part of net merit and what's changing and why. So really well done. So when we look at our scale of our net merit dollars and the differences, I mean, as Stephen said, the value will go up overall. And if I look at the Holstein, for example, and just look at the top genomic bulls, any age, one's just newborn or whatever, you can see that the amount that animals go up is also higher on the higher end. So you can see the average net merit of the bulls in the top 1 to 100. Again, these are bulls any age, so most of them are really not producing semen. Is 195 points. And that amount that bulls go up goes down with the genetic level of the previous net merit. So you can expect to see this, as Stephen said, this widening that goes on, but mostly all animals will be going up in net merit. It's just the amount of degree. So you'll see that your genomic bulls are going to be, your young genomic bulls are going to be going up more. Your genomic bulls that have semen are going to go up a little bit less, and the proven bulls will go up a little bit less just by the nature of their proof range. We said that the correlation was 98% in terms of, on the previous slides that Stephen showed and I showed. If I look at the top 20,000 genomic bulls, the correlation is 0.94. If we keep scaling that back, the top 10,000, the correlation is 0.88. The top 100, the correlation is 0.73, and we're all quite familiar that when you get correlations that get to that level, you're going to have quite a shuffle in the bulls and the females in the populations at the tops of the list. In the Jersey, obviously, we go mostly with a cheese merit. In Jersey, they don't have residual feed intake. There's still it's the exact formula in cheese merit Jersey that would be in cheese merit Holstein, but the traits that aren't available are basically given a breed average on all animals. So in essence, they're zeroed out. But otherwise they'll have the same components of change: body weight, productive life, a lot of the things that Stephen has covered. So in cheese merit, the top 100 Jersey bulls, any age, go up about 100 or just over 100. And you can see that there's a little less difference over time, but the top 1,000 to 2,000 goes up like 85 points overall in terms of cheese merit. Obviously, cheese merit and between Jersey and Holstein already is a little bit lower scale, so it may be in relationship. You can see the top 2,000 Jersey bulls only have a correlation of 0.86, the top 100 0.67. So even though there's no residual feed intake, when you get into that fat protein ratio in Jersey and you get into some of those things, the negative weight on body weight in Jersey done the same causes some significant re-rankings within the tops of the group. If I look at and just wanted to share with you, because oftentimes we can talk these changes, and until we start seeing it in bulls, then you start kind of identifying what it would be. So if we look at our Genomics bulls, these are bulls that are publicly available and semen available, and we're looking at the net merit on these bulls using their April proof. So this isn't a prediction of August, because we don't know August until August comes, but using the August formula and applying it to the April proof. And what you can see, and I guess what I want to highlight, is if you look at the bulls that go up the most. So an example is Seamer's Brave. And what do you notice to why he went up 206 versus, probably for this age group is somewhere around, average of 180, 170 might be the average of this kind of age group that would go up. So a bull like that is going up because his protein, you look at his protein and he's 72 protein and versus the fat of 86. So he was getting a lot of his points, we'll say, in net merit from protein, and with the emphasis, he lost more in relation to the fat. This is a bull that also goes up, has a 181 on feed saved. And so he is a bull that is going to contribute on terms of the impacts of what that does in his proof. So that would be a bull that would go up quite a bit. Some bulls like the top one there, Moonrise, goes up 196, probably a little more than average, even though this is a really high fat bull. So the reduction in fat would have an impact on him, but this is a bull that does very well on feed saved, expected first calving, early first calving, and the heifer livability is traits that he all has favor in. So it's the composite of these changes to what the bulls will do. If you look at ones that go up less on the scale, if you look at the Pine Tree horoscope on our list here, 100, this is a real big fat bull. So the reduction in fat is going to be a hard thing for the bull to gain back on, despite the fact that it's a pretty good feed save bull and pretty good on the other traits. So that fat protein ratio kind of works where that bull's going to go up less than the others. You can see the similar thing on the rally bull in relationship to how much he goes. But they're all going up a lot, but the ones that go up more fit the profile of the changes to the index. If I look at the top genomic bulls at CMEX that basically have a semen code, so there's either semen available or very close to. They may be available as early release semen right now, not in public market. And that's the case for at least a good group of these bulls. And so what can we notice from these? So a bull like Grey Cup, it goes up 243, and his brother Graziano goes up 211. So what makes them go up? They were high fat bulls, pretty decent on protein, but what really favors them is that feed saved at 231 and 226 really helps bulls like that by having maybe not losing points on the other and gaining quite a bit. I mean, of the bulls with semen code, Grey Cup and Graziano under the new net merit would be the number 2 and 3 of all bulls in the breed. So these are what we would say game changer bulls that attract a lot of interest in the genomic those herds building genomics, and certainly the market is looking forward to when they come available. Like a bull that goes up less, so Monteverdi is a really high fat bull. His feed save's a little bit lower than some of the other bulls, so he's going to have less impact in those. So you can kind of get used to, almost by looking at the profile, you could almost, without calculating the proof, can almost get to the point where you can predict the changes that will happen. Just looking at the proven bulls. So again, proven bulls on average might go up, I'm going to say somewhere around 140 to 150 points might be the average. So a proven bull that goes up 200, like Trajectory. And what is he? Well, he's got a higher protein than fat. He's a 75 to 72 fat. So this is a bull that's ready to gain. The feed saved at 216, again, really favors, despite the early first calving being a little lower. This is a bull that's going to move up the list quite a bit. Little Rock 207 goes up. He's an equal fat protein bull, really high feed save, 322. So this is a bull that's going to really benefit from those parts. So you can kind of break down the ones that will. Somebody like Positive, high fat bull, pretty decent protein, but not quite to the level of the fat, and a minus feed save bull. So this is the kind of bull in the new formula that's gonna not do quite as well as some of the other bulls in there. So just to give you a sense a bit of what kind of ranking and changes and the new values, and what the people have to start getting used to is, where was your threshold before on net merit, and where should it be now relative to what you're looking for those breeders that use net merit. When we look at the Jersey cheese merit, and this is Genomics bulls, and I'd say if you're looking at these bulls already with semen in the field and already working that way, they're probably on average going up maybe 80 points, something like that. And then our top bull there goes up more than double what the average would be. And so obviously, I mean, he's a bull that's gone up the last two proofs, I think, Stephen, and the formula helps him go up more. So the fat protein ratio you can see was 64-61, a negative body weight composite on the bull, and you would not see these negative body weights. I'm displaying what the system is using for cheese merit in their formula. They don't publish that value within the Jersey group necessarily. So it's behind the calculation, but used to demonstrate. So, I mean, a bull like that, the formula really fits the bull. And so he goes up, really big for a bull in that age. And a bull like Heritage, for example, of ours goes up less because, even though he's a really good protein bull, he's a higher fat bull. So he's got a little bit losing there, and he slides on the positive side of the body weight composite that will make him go up a little less. So you can see how sensitive it is to change, that bulls that will tend to benefit and bulls that will tend to not benefit in the cheese merit. Certainly you can identify why, but it's, I would say, quite sensitive to those differences that are there. If we look at our Jersey genomic bulls based on the new cheese merit, what I'm looking at is bulls. It's hard in Jersey because they don't always have semen codes, don't seem to kind of fly through quite as easy across the population as they do in Holstein sometimes. So I looked at bulls 5+ months of age, so 5 months and older. And so we've got, I mean, the one thing you will notice, if the average of this group is going up 100, say, then we've got quite a boost going. So our big EP is a polled bull. I mean, was really high merit, but goes up 100, is expected to go up, we're going to say 150. The Boss goes up 155. The Maserati goes up 172. In each case, you look at their negative body weight bulls with a good ratio of the protein to fat that helps them in the formula. So we in the Jersey have a lot of strength in terms of what's going on here. John Party goes down below, goes up but not as much as the average, we'll say, for his age. And that he's a higher fat, a little bit lower protein, and his body weight in particular is positive. That kind of works against a bull that way. But if you look at our top, at that, and we look at all bulls that are 5 months and older, then these top 5 bulls all move up in the rankings, and they're all in the top 15. So it's a pretty nice outcome for the Jersey program and the bulls that are there. Looking at top proven bulls for Jersey on cheese merit, there's some predominant bulls that benefit as well from this. Maybe, and sometimes there are bulls that did pretty well on the JPI, and then now they're starting to do better on the cheese merit. But Listowel P is a pole transmitter that is that has been a phenom a bit in terms of the pedigrees of top genomic animals, and he also benefits. And you can see in a bull like that, the fat protein ratio 57-53, the minus body weight, bull like that's going to be benefiting this formula change. The bull below him, Boost, has higher protein, negative body weight, and good proofs on the other 2 traits. So you can kind of, I guess, get used to identifying what makes the bulls that are going to benefit the cheese merit. It doesn't mean it's for everyone. Is cheese merit for you? Is net merit for you? Those are the things I think that everybody has to look for and ask themselves through this. So when we really look at the net outcome of all this, the Holstein net merit is becoming less correlated with TPI. I don't think there's any getting around unless they're going to make a TPI change. If we look at the top 20,000 bulls, net merit versus TPI, the correlation was 0.8, and now the correlation is 0.70. So it's starting to kind of almost be like a distinct product segment that, there was a time when they're closer related where you kind of select for them both and you kind of can almost get both. As they become different, then it really is distinct in terms of its selection and what you're looking for. So I think for the dairies, you want to think about what your needs are and which index aligns most closely with your selection goals to what they represent and where do you want to be as to those kind of 2 indexes and what you look for. And in CMEX Works, we have a customized client index to try and take some of this part out where you put your needs in, your actual economics on farm, and try to derive an index that actually is for you and get a little bit less out of the aspects of maybe national indexes changing that may or may not, fall in line to what you feel. So in summary, obviously we have this new net merit formula coming out next week. Again, the new traits, the feed save traits with, as Stephen described, heifer livability, early first calving, this protein fat change and productive life and the type changes that have some impact that carry through our rankings. Overall, not significant re-rankings at the tops of the list. I think we would consider it pretty significant re-rankings that certainly draw the attention of genetic companies, draw the attention of breeders that are needing to use these indexes, market these indexes, select for these indexes. So as we say, correlation of 0.98 on all, but 0.73 to 0.88 in the higher genetic groups tells us that we're looking at quite a bit of re-ranking. Many CMEX bulls at the top of the new ranking list. Obviously, there's going to be some bulls that are going to fare better than others, and that's going to be true for every company. We have a lot of what we'll say really flagship bulls at CMEX that are benefiting quite well from the index and will do, and we're quite pleased. Greater diversity between net merit and cheese merit and that different product line is something we're going to have to draw attention to and understand. So identify your needs, which product line fits you and your goals, and select for those. So I'm going to, I guess I'll say this now and then we'll just go for questions, is every proof week, every year or every 3 months, I guess, or 4 months it is with the proofs. we have a webinar at the end of the week on in essence, news on proofs. What's kind of been a bit of the summary of changes in the proofs, whether that's in pedigrees or product lineups, reviewing some of the expectations and changes that we see in overall the CEMEX lineup from the August proof. So book it on your calendar, Friday, August 13th, a lucky day, I guess, 1 p.m. Eastern for the next webinar that you can register at cemex.com/webinars to register for this event. So I'm going to hand this over to Krista, that's going to answer or go on any questions, I believe.
Okay, we have a couple questions coming in. The first one is, why do the net merit dollar values increase so much?
Stephen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I guess the and we highlighted this to some degree that the inflation that happens from the addition of new traits that provide additional economic value, and also, you know, recalculation of other traits that will provide more, or that are now calculated to provide more marginal value than was previously thought. So that being productive life, that I'm thinking of specifically, or even the negative emphasis on body weight composite, can provide more marginal profitability by selecting against body weight composite. And so as we see those increases in emphasis, then we're going to see a broadening of the overall index, and therefore a greater average value as well, because there is more to be gained when we add these new traits in. They're adding additional economic value on top of what was already there.
Okay, the next question coming in, they agree that there's an opportunity to improve efficiency with negative weightings on size. However, should we be concerned about the potential long-term health fertility issues that may come from negative selection on body weight composite, reduced strength, higher dairy form?
So I guess what I would say there is it's something to be monitored, and there are absolutely working groups constantly monitoring that sort of thing. But the nice thing with that specific concern is we have direct traits for those things that are still given emphasis in the net merit and in other indexes. So if we're selecting directly on health and fertility, as long as we continue to put positive emphasis on health and fertility, we do still expect to see progress in those areas. And if you look specifically at the expected progress of those traits given selection for net merit, we still expect to see positive progress on those traits with net merit. The only potential challenge down the road is if there is some sort of non-linear relationship between body size and those traits, where maybe if we go past some unknown threshold that the health and fertility suffer in a non-linear fashion relative to the change in body size. I don't expect that would be the case, but that's the only thing that's maybe not perfectly accounted for here, because it is a linear breeding index, a linear equation. And so that linear equation can be susceptible to something like that, but a non-linear relationship there doesn't make a lot of sense to me from a biological standpoint. So I would suspect, as long as we maintain positive emphasis on health and fertility traits within these indexes, that we will still be making progress in the right directions on each of those traits.
And I think, Stephen, they agree that they'd love to have the metabolic body weight and true body weights as their data that they were assessing from. And so they're using that as the best indirect, I guess, predictor without having the direct metabolic body weight. So I agree with you that, I think they want to develop a better part to identify the body maintenance component, but this is the best prediction and they feel pretty confident about it. But I agree with you that when the body weight is being derived, particularly by a couple traits, then possibly it creates something else inadvertently. But like you say, the selection for health and fertility should in nature protect it, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it, Jay. And I know from the few conversations I've had, and this goes for Canada as well, I believe, is that there is work in that area to really understand a better measure of metabolic body weight, whether it be direct metabolic body weight or whether it be working to tweak the index on individual conformation traits to better predict metabolic body weight than the current index does. I do think it does a reasonable job of predicting metabolic body weight, but I do think there are improvements that can be made there. And as that reference population grows, as we get more animals with body size, true body size, body weight, as well as feed intake measures, that's certainly a possibility to do a better job of that specific prediction as well.
That's great. Is that the last question, Krista?
Just one more question, asking if the recording of the webinar is going to be available, and yes, it will be. It's actually going to be at that address that you can see on the screen right now, cmex.com/webinars, and that's all the questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, Stephen, Stephen and I are really pleased to be here with you today, and really thank the participation, and hope you enjoyed the webinar. And again, next Friday. So I don't know if you call that next Friday, but next week, Friday, August 13th is our next webinar on our Sire summaries that happen next week. So with that, hope everyone has a great day, and thank you once again.
Thanks.